Have you ever noticed how some people seem to have it all? Money, cars, the whole shebang, and yet they're more stressed than ever? I mean, what's the deal with that? It seems like once you start raking in the cash, you're supposed to be living the dream, right? But hold on a second, because here's the kicker. The moment you start making money, you're stepping right into a trap. Honestly, it's a little mind boggling. I remember when I hit my first decent payday. There I was, feeling like I'd finally cracked the code to adulting. But instead of basking in financial freedom, I found myself spiraling in a maze of choices and responsibilities. It was like being handed the keys to a new car without any idea how to drive it. You've got this newfound power, but it comes with a side of anxiety. What do you spend it on? How do you invest it? Should you buy the fancy coffee every day or save for a rainy day? It's like this financial roller coaster where you're strapped in for the ride, but someone else is controlling the levers. I've seen it happen to so many people. They get a taste of success, and instead of feeling lighter, they carry this invisible backpack full of what now and what if questions. And let me tell you, that backpack gets heavy real quick. My name is Ben, and I've been down this road. Today, I'm going to show you how to avoid stepping into this common trap and keep your peace of mind intact. We're going to dive into the reasons why making more money can be more of a curse than a blessing. And more importantly, how you can navigate this minefield without losing your sanity. If you're new here, consider subscribing for more stories and insights that aim to make navigating life's financial twists and turns just a bit easier. All right, buckle up because we're about to embark on this journey together. Let's dive in. So, which brings us to our first reason why making more money can feel like stepping into a trap: the infamous lifestyle inflation. Let me tell you a story about my buddy Mike, who at one point was making serious bank. We're talking about someone who went from eating ramen noodles in college to splurging on gourmet sushi dinners every weekend. I mean, good for him, right? But here's the catch: his expenses skyrocketed just as quickly as his income. It was almost like watching a contestant on a game show move to the next level, only to realize that the stakes were way higher than they initially appeared. Mike used to drive this old beat up Honda Civic. It had character, but the moment he got his first hefty paycheck, he swapped it for a sleek new luxury SUV. And that was just the beginning. Suddenly, his weekends were filled with trips to designer stores, and his nights were spent dining at restaurants where the appetizers cost more than a week's worth of groceries. He even traded in his old apartment for a swanky downtown loft with floor-to-ceiling windows. It looked straight out of a magazine. But here's the wild part. Despite the impressive salary, Mike was still living paycheck to paycheck. How is that even possible? It used to drive me crazy just thinking about it. But honestly, it's a pretty common scenario. I've noticed it time and time again. The more people earn, the more they feel compelled to spend. It's like there's this unspoken belief that you deserve a life upgrade with every pay raise. Here's the thing: lifestyle inflation is a sneaky little gremlin. It creeps up on you. One minute you're feeling on top of the world, and the next you're wondering where all your money went. Mike found that his bigger paycheck bought him a bigger cage. And let me repeat that because it's important. The real challenge of having money is realizing that it doesn't automatically buy you peace of mind. And this is where it gets interesting. You see, Mike's story isn't isolated. It's a pattern I've seen so many times. People finally make it, and instead of finding peace, they're stuck trying to maintain this new, expensive lifestyle. It's almost like they're running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up. And by the end of it, you're left wondering if all these material upgrades were worth the stress and the endless cycle of earning and spending. In real life, this might look like upgrading to the latest gadgets every year, buying clothes you don't need just because they're on trend, or booking vacations just to have something to post on social media. It's this perpetual loop of more, more, more. The lesson here is to be conscious of how your expenses are creeping up and to ask yourself if these upgrades are genuinely making you happier. So while it's tempting to give in to lifestyle inflation, catching yourself in this trap is key. Remember, the goal isn't just to earn more, it's to live better. And sometimes living better means not letting your expenses inflate with your income. Otherwise, you'll find yourself in a bigger, shinier cage, wondering why you still feel trapped. The next trap in the world of newfound wealth is a bit more subtle, but no less destructive: the pressure to maintain appearances. I mean, who hasn't felt that nudge to buy something just to belong, right? It all became painfully clear to me when I met a guy named Eric at a networking event. Now, Eric seemed like he had it all together, dressed in tailored suits and driving a sleek sports car. But as we got talking, his facade started to crack a little. Eric confided in me that he felt this overwhelming need to keep up with his wealthier friends. You know, the types who vacation in the Maldives on a whim and think nothing of dropping thousands on a weekend skiing trip. Eric was constantly worried about not measuring up. It turns out that the stress of maintaining this image was eating him alive. I remember him telling me he felt like he was putting on a performance in this grand, never ending play called My Life. And honestly, it was a bit eye opening and infuriating. Because here's the thing: while Eric was busy buying clothes he couldn't afford and keeping up with the latest gadgets, I was meticulously planning my own financial steps, trying to build something sustainable. Yet there Eric was, appearing to live this glamorous life, while I felt like I was stuck on the sidelines, crunching numbers and budgeting down to the last cent. But then it hit me. Eric was caught in a classic case of what I like to call keeping up with the Joneses syndrome. It's the trap of comparison and conformity, pushing you to spend more just to fit in, and it's exhausting. You know, maintaining appearances isn't just a financial burden, it's an emotional one too. It forces you to value the opinions of others over your own peace of mind. In my experience, this pattern is common and, let's be real, a little maddening. While some people out there are busy curating the perfect image, others are quietly building their lives around what genuinely makes them happy, not what looks good on Instagram. The insight here, it's all about finding balance and recognizing when you're spending just to uphold an image. Keeping up with the Joneses isn't a race you can win. It's one that'll leave you breathless and broke. Now, I'm not saying you should live like a monk, far from it. But being conscious of your motivations can save you a whole lot of stress and dissatisfaction. So, while maintaining appearances might seem like a necessary part of financial success, it's important to remember that true success isn't measured by what others see. It's about finding contentment in what truly matters to you. And that, my friends, is the real luxury. Here's the thing that most of us don't want to admit. Once you start making money, you might fall into the trap of equating your income with your self-worth. I mean, it's easy to believe that more money equals more success, right? But let me tell you a story about how this illusion can crumble. So, there was a time when I was convinced that my worth was tied directly to the digits in my bank account. Back then, every pay raise or bonus felt like a big validation sticker. I thought, finally, I'm someone in this world. But then came a downturn, a dry spell where the earnings weren't flowing as abundantly, and suddenly I felt like a nobody. Honestly, it was a bit devastating. This isn't just my story, though. I've seen this pattern play out so many times. Take my buddy Jake, for example. Jake had been riding high in his tech startup job, pulling in a salary that most people only dream of. He was living the life until his company went through a massive restructure. Almost overnight, Jake went from being the golden child to just another guy in the office. Watching him navigate, that was like watching someone get off a roller coaster and realize the ground wasn't as solid as they thought. Here's the kicker. Both Jake and I learned the hard way that while your bank account might grow, if your self-worth is tied to it, you'll always feel bankrupt. It's like building a house on sand. One gust of wind, and it all comes crashing down. Let me put that in perspective for you. In real life, this means that when your income is linked to your identity, every financial setback feels like a personal failure. It's not just a dip in earnings, it's a dent in who you believe you are. This mindset makes even small financial hiccups feel like earthquakes, shaking your confidence to its core. Now, picture this: it's meeting a future business partner at a random coffee shop where you find yourself embarrassingly worried about your appearance because you forgot to wear your designer watch. Or it's hesitating to start a passion project due to the fear it won't generate immediate income or prestige. I've seen too many people, smart and talented, shackling themselves with these golden handcuffs, believing they're only as good as their last paycheck. Contrast this with someone who places value in their experiences, relationships, and personal growth over their net worth. These individuals often weather financial storms with a calm that's almost enviable. They're the ones who can lose a job, but see it as an opportunity to pivot, not a failure. They know their worth isn't determined by a number, but by their resilience and capability to adapt. So, what this actually looks like in the real world, it's about embracing the idea that your value isn't in your wallet, but in your character, skills, and the difference you make. When you stop measuring yourself by your income and start focusing on what you bring to the table beyond your finances, that's when you truly begin to thrive. Honestly, it's a little infuriating how this trap seems so convincing until you see through it. But once you do, that's where real freedom begins. Our fourth reason gets right to the heart of why the image you create with money can actually become a liability. Here's the thing: once you start making a decent amount of money, especially if you've been labeled as successful or the smart one, there's this invisible pressure to maintain that image. I mean, think about it. You've been the golden child, the one everyone's proud of, and suddenly that becomes your identity. The fear that making a mistake won't just hurt your bank account. It feels like irrefutable proof that you're not as bright or capable as everyone thinks. Now, contrast that with someone who's never been praised for their financial acumen. Let's say there's a guy who never really cared about financial success and instead focused on his art, hobbies, or relationships. Since his self worth wasn't tied to being the money guy, he has nothing to lose. He can take wild swings without fearing the judgment of failure. And in the end, he might just be the one who finds real success because he dared to leap where others hesitated. Here's the beautiful irony. While the so-called smart people are terrified of looking stupid regular folks, unburdened by this identity crisis, are out there doing the unthinkable. Take the story of Gary Dahl, for instance. He made a fortune selling pet rocks, a literal rock in a box with a pamphlet on how to care for it. Sounds absurd, right? Yet it was a massive hit. While everyone else was too busy worrying about creating the next big tech startup, Gary was counting his dollars from what was considered a joke of a product. This brings me to a concept I like to call the let them mentality. Instead of fretting over what others might think, people like Gary simply let them think whatever they want. They understand that public perception is just smoke and mirrors, a distraction from what really matters. The pattern here is obvious once you see it. Folks who've never been weighed down by the burden of maintaining an image have the freedom to experiment, to fail, and then to succeed beyond anyone's expectations. They see the world as a playground of opportunities rather than a stage where they need to perform perfectly at all times. Honestly, the fear of looking foolish keeps more people stuck than any financial hardship ever could. Because while some are busy safeguarding their smart reputations, others with nothing to prove are out there turning stupid ideas into outrageous success stories. It's almost poetic. True freedom comes when you're willing to look a little silly. This brings us to our fifth and final reason. Here's where things get really interesting. It's the trap of prestige and status. You might think that once you start making money, the natural progression is to chase after more prestigious titles or roles, but this pursuit often leads to more stress than success. I've seen it firsthand, and honestly, it's a little infuriating to watch people fall into it. Imagine you're 18 years old, standing at a crossroads, deciding between attending a pricey, prestigious university and going to a more affordable local college. The allure of a big name degree is hard to resist. You think it'll open doors and offer a gilded path to success. But let's fast forward 20 years. You, with your Ivy League diploma, are buried in student loans and working long hours to maintain a high-profile career that never quite feels fulfilling. Meanwhile, the kid who chose the local college route, they're probably debt-free and have a modest but steady career, investing smartly and living a balanced life. Who do you think is in better financial shape? And it's not just education where status traps people. I know this guy, let's call him Tom. He was a top-notch lawyer in a big city law firm, living that high-flying lifestyle everyone envied. His office was on the 32nd floor, his holiday destinations were exotic, and his suits were tailor-made. But here's what people didn't see. Tom was exhausted, barely had time for his family, and his stress levels were through the roof. Then you have Sam, a lawyer too, but at a small town firm, working reasonable hours and spending weekends mountain biking and climbing with his kids. Sam's not worried about impressing anyone. He's too busy enjoying life and watching his savings grow. Here's the crucial difference. The Toms of the world get trapped by their own expectations. They're playing a game of appearances. But the Sams, they focus on what works for them. They're too busy succeeding in their own right to care about societal status. Just think about it. The math isn't even close when you factor in the cost of high status living versus the benefits of a contented life. And this is where the real revelation lies. The trap of prestige isn't just financial, it's emotional. When you stop caring about impressing others and start focusing on what truly matters to you, that's when you break free. It's a completely different game, and it's the one where the true winners play. Here's what's really wild about all this. The moment you start earning money, these traps I've talked about aren't just financial. They're emotional and psychological hurdles too. The traits that truly make people successful aren't about how fat your paycheck is or the prestige of your lifestyle. Instead, it's about resilience, the courage to say no to lifestyle inflation, and the wisdom to understand that happiness isn't tied to the price tag of your possessions. But here's the catch. Society often tells us that more is better. More money, more status, more stuff. If you've been told this your whole life, it can actually be harder to break free from these traps. Funny thing is, those who start with less sometimes have the advantage. They are naturally more resourceful, appreciate experiences over possessions, and find joy in simplicity. The liberating truth is genuine success is within reach for everyone. You don't need a yacht or a penthouse. You just need to develop the right mindset and habits. Start by being intentional with your money. Focus on building connections and living authentically, not just chasing the next paycheck. So, what are the quick takeaways? Begin by taking action instead of endlessly planning. Value relationships over material things. Don't be afraid to fail or look foolish, because that's how you learn and grow. In the end, it all boils down to one thing. Make money your servant, not your master. And you'll find that true wealth is far more than figures on a bank statement. Maybe it's time to embrace being smart with your money and start truly enjoying life.